Sorry about that. We are having gremlins in our technology. I say we, I mean my other half, because I don't know what on earth goes on there. Just it's a mystery to me anyway. Apologies for that. So I was just talking about Catherine Knight. So I won't go into the details, but if you do want to look up Catherine Knight, it was around the year 2000, I think, that you actually said that in there, about 2000. So it's probably one of the gruesomest murders that I've heard of, and I've read a lot of murders, so I completely understand your friend's perspective. It's a strange one. So in the UK, and definitely in America, there is a really lengthy process. Now, I do believe that it exists in Australia because of the fact that it would be unusual for Western civilization like that not to offer similar. What it tends to be is like a gradual process, and when the mediator thinks that you're ready, so your friend's ready to go and have that conversation, then that will be mutually agreed. The issue you have is that Catherine may not be as obliging. Now, obviously, she had some form of relationship with the children, so I imagine that she remembers Catherine in that way. So there might be a levy in there because of the fact that she does have that relationship, albeit it ended in a horrific way. So I wouldn't think about what it is that you need to say or don't need to say. I think you should see yourself as, how do I support the process being the best process possible? That would be, look up in your local area or in a national way, what mediation services there are for prisoners and victims of families. Oh, Peter's found it, I think. So look on there, and then it will be contacting with one of those individuals. She'll be assigned a mediator. That mediator will speak to the prison and speak to Catherine. At that point, if Catherine is willing to engage, I know that sounds awful because you're like, she should be, but not everyone wants to face their crimes. Not everyone wants to look in the eyes of those individuals whose lives they have absolutely ruined and have those honest conversations. And with mediation, I have to be very clear, they are honest beyond belief. This is about the prisoner knowing that it won't do anything to reduce their sentence, knowing it wouldn't have any impact on parole, that it won't make any difference in the prison system, i.e. they won't get any favourable marks for doing it. So it's a solid, there is nothing for that prisoner to gain regarding impact on their experience at the prison. So if they engage, it's coming from a place of them wanting either to create a sense of peace within themselves, or to ask for forgiveness, or to just answer honest questions because they think it could bring some level of acceptance for them and you. So I would definitely look at that. It's not going to be a job for you to go and do that, because truth is, if the daughter wants to just stab Catherine in the eye because she feels that vengeance, that's not going to be a process that will be helpful. If she doesn't get the answers that she needs because it hasn't been planned properly, that won't be helpful. If she isn't prepared emotionally for the kind of onslaught of feelings, then that's going to be something that's going to be traumatizing. So do it the proper way. If there's one thing I can say, it's do it through the proper means. It might take longer, but the process, the progress, and the positive outcome is going to be far more assured than if she gets a VO and goes and visits this woman, and then, you know, this woman's a malicious sadist who's actually sat there enjoying telling you how that man's life ended. And whilst you know how it ended, you don't know what was going on. You don't want that kind of power play by a psychopath. I'm not saying that is the way it would end up, but that's your worst case scenario if you don't go through those processes. So that would be my honest advice and professional advice. And also it would be my personal advice as regards, how do we protect your friend? She's had enough trauma in her life. And even though she thinks that she could do it because she's managed to get through to some degree the murder of her father, the atrocities that he suffered at that woman's hands, believe me, if she was to sit there and Catherine were to be powerful over her, it would put her right back down where she started. So that would be my advice. Play this to her and then show her the information so she understands what I'm talking about. Hi Emma, over the last few months, you've given me such kind advice about my daughter's suicide attempts and hospitalisations. She came home and did succeed in ending her life. I left her alone for 23 minutes and that was all it took. I'll never forgive myself How do I ease this pain? How do I help my other children who are 9, 12, 14 and 15 years and are so confused, sad and angry? How do my husband and I find a way to, I don't know, just carry on in some way? Question mark. Her name was Abby. She was just 18 and she was a joy to us all. Our sadness is so complete. Thank you. I remember all of the ones that you wrote to me about. So I feel like I've been on Abby's journey a little bit with you. I haven't the words that can meet any comfort at this moment in time. All I know is that you did everything that you possibly could so that Abby knew that she was loved. It's the hardest part about dealing with somebody's suicide that you love, is you have to stop seeing yourself as the individual who was meant to save them. It's what keeps you up at night. It's what burns into your being and infects every single second. The what ifs, the how it should have been, the if only I could's. All you need to know, it's all you need to know, is that you'd have given up half your lifespan to let her live. All of it probably. All you need to know is that if love could have saved her, she'd be fit and well. All you need to know is that Abby made choices that you didn't want her to make, but she made those choices seeped in love. It wasn't because she couldn't see it. It wasn't because she couldn't feel it. It was because even though she had all the love, care, support, all of it, the pain was too big. And even though you can say to yourself, well, maybe in time, maybe we could have found a way to solve it, that's something that's probably impossibly true. But the pain was too big to ever get to that position. So try not to think about all those ifs, buts, whys and wherefores and hows and if onlys. They're the things that will toxify every single part of your world. They will breach every sense of safety. They will make life feel less colourful. They will do all the things that agony will amplify if you don't accept that if love could have saved her, she would be well. You did everything in your power, but she still had choice. And sometimes I think that's one of the most difficult parts of dealing with suicide. And I am so just on my journey with my father's death, because it feels like the most overpowering and overwhelming confusion and distortion and surprise and all these things that now have this full stop in this life with no way of changing it or gauging how you can manifest some kind of solution. It's over. And that is so sharp and sudden and impactful and present in everything you do. But if you buy into the what could I or what should I, that's just a recipe for drowning in it. Abby had 18 years of life and love. It doesn't matter that the 18 feels so young, because we're not going to concentrate on that end. We're not going to concentrate on the part of her life where there was pain and confusion and distress and agony and fear and maybe exhaustion, maybe acceptance. All of those things were the very end. There were all those other years of joy and laughter and family and connection and all the things that have meaning in your family. And that's where you have to concentrate your efforts. It really is. Because if you don't, there's no way of reconciling what happened. I don't know why young people are more and more killing themselves. I don't know why there is a 93% increase in females under the age of 25 doing it. I don't know why. I know it's not because they're not loved. I know it's not because they're not cared for. There is something deeper. There's something more cellular. There's something more about our society. And until we're able to solve that as a village, as a community, then we are going to have so many more Abbeys. And that's not to minimise your Abbey, because she will have been the 1 in a billion. But it's recognising that, like I said, don't ever lose sight of the love and the meaning, because it all still exists. And now it's about how she keeps her story in your family. Your children are going to be magnificently shocked, vulnerable, devastated and lost. They might act like they're just getting on with it. They might be very angry. They might just withdraw. These are all natural feelings. But the one thing we have to be aware of, and I'm saying this to you as a mother who knows what it's like to watch the impact of suicide on our children, their reality of mindset now needs to really be protected, because they are more at risk, as you are. When you go through these devastating, traumatizing experiences, we are all more at risk. We think about taking our own lives. So have those conversations with your children. Let them be open about some of the thoughts that may be going through their head. Let them talk to you about the way that they fundamentally feel some darkness, and that they also maybe think about those things, because that's how we learn to protect. They're hard conversations to have, believe me. They're the hardest conversations I've had, to imagine that my child doesn't want to be here. But if I don't have them, then how can I protect them? And as a reactive experience, who say that children, young people, adults who lose somebody to suicide are substantially more at risk themselves. I'm not trying to put worry on you, I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm saying, like, we protect them by acknowledging it and meeting them in their space. If they're quiet, be quiet with them, but be with them. If they're sad, be sad, but be with them. If they're angry, show your own anger about the situation with them. Meet them in that way. Meet them on that bridge. I would say, without a doubt, you could do some family counselling, because you've lost a little girl. She was a kid, 18. And I know that she's wanted to not be here for a while, and I don't know what that is sometimes about the human condition. I don't know whether it's that some people feel like they're not in the right place, that there's somewhere else they're meant to be. I don't know whether some feel it's a rebellion towards the way that we live our lives now, and it's not the way that they choose and wish to. I don't know whether it's just the intense chemical pain and problems caused by emotions that aren't regulated properly because there's something going on there. I don't know. But what I do know is this: you're dealing with traumatic grief, and it's going to take a long time. Don't expect anything to make sense for the next year to 2 years. And even then, know that you're only just going to be beginning that journey. It's a tiptoeing into the grief area. Surround yourself with people who understand these conversations. I talk about it all the time. Like, I might not come on here and just talk about it all the time, though I bring it in, but I talk about it all the time. You know, it helps to just keep saying how shocked and how has this happened and why has this happened. And you're having to do that all while cradling your own grief, okay? So get some really big help. And I'm so sorry that Abby's journey didn't end how all of us here wanted it to end, okay? I hope you really feel that. I hope you feel the love of the people who are listening and watching. We were all invested in her being okay. And just sending you so much love, and keep coming. Because, you know, we always talk about it, and you'll have a hunger to express yourself about this. You'll have a hunger to talk about suicide. You'll have a hunger. I remember for the first year at least thinking, I won't talk about Dad to this random stranger. You know, I won't do it, because why would I just say, by the way, my dad's just killed himself? And yet, didn't matter who it was, didn't matter whether it was a cashier, didn't matter whether it was somebody at a cafe, it didn't matter whether it was a stranger I met for 5 minutes in a green room. I would literally somehow, in that first few minutes, be like, my dad's just killed himself. And it wasn't even about needing a response. They mostly looked awkward or felt like they pitied me. I understand that. It wasn't about that. It's just about having to say it. My brain needed to hear it said. I couldn't just think about it. Thinking about it drives you mad. I had to say it. And as I said it, it would be like, yeah, that's definitely happened. And it would be this cycle and loop of, I need to speak it and hear it, speak it and hear it. And even now I do. So I'm not going to pretend I understand the loss of a child. I do understand it's my deepest fear. So I can resonate with you on that level. But just sending you so much love. I need help, please. I left a 12-year domestic violence relationship nearly 4 years ago with ongoing stalking and harassment. I've now needed to leave England and to go to Northern Ireland with my children. He's been put in prison and has a lifetime injunction. Please, could you advise me? Okay. I'm not sure as to what kind of advice that you want. It sounds like because he's in prison and he has a life injunction, you're pretty safe in that level. The fact that you've relocated also, again, kind of music to my ears, because it means that you've got an opportunity to kind of leave behind some of that horrific stuff that happened to you and then start again. The hardest thing, I think, when we come out of a coercively controlled or violent relationship is we don't know how to trust ourselves. We don't know how to trust the way the world works because we've had so much of our self-esteem chipped away over the years by so many people in that context that you end up feeling invisible, and finding visibility is going to be a really powerful exercise for you. If you really want to move through this, if you really want to figure out how you can change your mindset and change your state, you have to start thinking about how to get to know you more. Because you won't be who you were at the beginning of that relationship. You're somebody new. And that will have both good points and bad points. There will be points of you will have grown and become more empathic and understanding. You'll be more kind in so many ways because of this horrible experience. You'll also be more bruised and broken and vulnerable as far as emotional management and a belief that you have the capacity to find people who will treat you well and not do something similar. So this is a lesson in needing to grow confidence. So what strategies would I employ? Well, first of all, I'd want to make sure that I create a strong stability with a few friends that I can create. You might have them there already. If you don't, find apps, join local centres, ask around for friends, literally find your tribe. That's one of the most important foundations when we're starting to rebuild our lives. Secondly, find new reflections. That might be going and joining a club, doing another interest or hobby. I want you to meet people who don't know you, who have never known you, and they're going to meet you as you are so you have a new reflection of who you are, because he's broken one of them. And you need to reform and reframe that reflection. You want to look into other people's eyes and have them respond to you as the person you are. And as you do that, you'll internalize her. And as you internalize her, you'll get to know her. And as you get to know her, you'll get to grow her. And then your resilience and strength and trust in the self, that will revisit, that will arrive. And then it will be even more hardened by the fact that you have had these horrible experiences and moved through them. The one thing I know about surviving is, years after you ask an individual who has been through abject pain, humiliation, abuse, even death of people around them, when they've come to a point in their life where they've grown to this position where they've got things in order, they've got to know who they are, very often they say that whilst they would never have chosen to have what happened happen to them, what's come from it has been something of great blessing. Not because they don't profoundly acknowledge the grief that they experienced, but just that there's this sense of, yeah, who I am now is good. Who I am now knows themselves. And that's what all of us want. The journey of life. I was writing something on loneliness the other day. And I was writing it because a lot of people have been feeling very lonely this year. These past 12 months have been god-awful. They've literally been, well, I would say the worst year of my life was 2019 when I lost Dad. But then 2020 is definitely like a near to that worst year. It has totally transformed our understanding of what makes life possible. It has totally broken down the fabric of unity in society. It has totally broken down the poverty gap further. And it has totally broken down our capacity to have conversations which don't end in conflict a great deal. So there's been so much loneliness. And I was writing about the fact that loneliness is one of those things that's teaching us the very thing we haven't been allowed, which is connection. And loneliness is something that we all grow with. It's something that we're born with. Like, I genuinely believe that every single human being who's listening to me now, you resonate with it. You know that when you go to bed every night and when you wake up every morning, there is this instinct in you that no matter who you are around, no matter how loved you are, no matter how content you feel, you know you're alone. Making peace with that is one of the most profoundly important things that you can do as a human being. Accepting that no one can reach in and really touch that area of you that you know is just purely unauthentically you, and that you sometimes feel scared of, because it's that knowing that you came into this world and you will leave this world and it will just be you. The fact that I believe in higher consciousness and us all continuing, it doesn't matter, because there's that knowledge that that journey is one that is alone. And that's one of the reasons why making peace and becoming content within it and almost learning to swim within that is really profoundly important, I think, for so many of us. But it's terrifying to do, particularly when we've been bruised and broken by somebody else's actions. Solitude is a very strange thing for me. I crave it. I look for solitude and I try to sit with my aloneness because I'm being taught connection, but I'm also being taught that it will never fill the gap. And some people will try to fill the gap with drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, pretty much any negative kind of addiction. That's not trying to do something to harm the self. That's trying to do something to fill the hole, to fill the void. Probably the only time that I don't find that in people that I work with, it's people who are very spiritually conscious or have a devout belief system. So spirituality and faith tend to fill it in a different way. But again, that's something that you come to terms with on that journey, because you still accept that whilst you are with God or with faith or with some kind of deity that you connect with, you still acknowledge that that journey is one that you take alone. But it's one where you feel that you're taken alone but carried by. So again, I think that all of us need to do that work after this year. Enforced solitude and isolation and loneliness has probably made us feel more afraid of the very thing that we need to become more peaceful with. Maybe I'll do that on a session one night. Hi Emma, I've been babysitting for a lovely married couple in my street. The husband has told me he is falling for him. I live across the street from him. Every time I'm out in my front garden, he comes out of the house with his boy and shouts over to me and smiles. I'm starting to have feelings for him too, but I don't want to break up his marriage. Any idea on what I can do? I don't want to sound like a take a break story, but it does have that stereotypical guy who's bored, in relationship, meets pretty babysitter, wants to have a bit of fun, starts to lust about his old life where he was free, and starts identifying that he has feelings for the young, single, attractive babysitter. That's not to diminish you. You are the young, probably attractive babysitter, and that doesn't diminish any of your qualities or the fact that you stand out for him. You probably do. But this is a guy with a young child. He's a guy who's in a relationship. I have every respect for anybody who chooses to end a relationship because they realise they don't want to be in that relationship. That's something that is admirable. It means that they are cutting ties before even contemplating getting involved with somebody else. Your feelings that you're having. One, remember, there is nothing like somebody finding us attractive, particularly if we find them quite cute. He's got a cute little boy. There are some deflection mechanisms where you look at him as a father and you think, well, he's a really good father. That must mean that he's a really good guy. But basically he's weaponizing his son to prove to you what a great guy he is. You know, I want to have sex with you, but I'm a great guy. Look at me with being a great dad. Think about that. That's a manipulation. I know that sounds really awful, but that's what it is. The child is being used as a tool to evidence that he's not really as shallow and he's not really as deceitful as he's planning to be. because I want you to put yourself in the position of the wife. She invites you into his home and her home because you're trusted. This isn't on you, you're single. But you're invited into that space. Her understanding is she's having a relationship with a man who loves her and they have a child together. They're even going out together. In the meantime, he's thinking about how he can get into a sexual situation with you. So think about that mindset and then ask yourself what you're worth. Because any man or any woman who is not willing to confront the reality of their relationship and to say, I don't want to be with you anymore, but instead wants to be able to have liaisons with another human being, not thinking about the impact that will have on their feelings or the consequences it might have on their life, but because it seems potentially possible, i.e. he's picking up that you like him a little bit, he's going to manipulate that further. There is nothing wrong with you developing feelings for this man, and it's not my job to judge you. Everybody's life is their own. The rules and regulations and moralities of our relationships and our real realities around our society, they're on the people who want to make them. I don't judge people that way. But what I would say is, I don't think he needs to be having these conversations with you right now. I think it's going to be deeply confusing for you. I think it's going to mean that you start to grow these feelings and start fantasizing about possibilities, and he's not in a position to offer them you now. He isn't. So what I would do, if I'm really honest with you, is I would absolutely try to pull back. I would acknowledge that you like him, but I would say to him, I'm really sorry, you're married. I don't want to get involved in some kind of weird triad where you're with your wife, you're coming on to me and you're using your son as a bit of a weapon. I need you to back off. And if you do want to leave your relationship with your wife, well, then that's something we can revisit when it's happened. That way you are clean of any guilt. And that way he is given a very clear message that you will not be used as some kind of mistress, because that's what he's rooting for at this moment in time. And also remember, you don't have evidence as to whether he's done this before. And if you ask him, he'll just lie to you anyway. Try to pull back a little bit, protect you. It's very easy to start falling for somebody when they start being really overtly flirtatious and compassionate and kind and flattering about us. Also think about who you are and where you are, because vulnerability will always be something that these people notice. Are you a bit bruised? Are you lonely? Are you looking for a relationship? Because they're all things that will make him be able to home into those kind of things and feelings. Just try to pull back a little bit. In my advice, you can ignore me completely and I'll absolutely be here, whatever. I'm not judging you, but they're my genuine feelings about that. Evening, Emma, I'm sorry to bother you. Not bothering me. I'm struggling at the moment. My mum has severe pneumonia or chest infections for the last 2 months with no break. I sorted tests, but she's so ill she can't have them done at the minute. She's starting to lose hope. I'm watching this play out as if I'm behind glass and mum needs the productive things to get me done. Not this mask wearing, staring out of the window at nothing. Me, she has with her day and night at the minute. I can't fix things. Why am I like this? But I just can't seem to snap into being productive. Thanks for all you do. I think you're in a situation where you're pretty traumatised by your mum being so poorly. It sounds like it's been relentless for you, and you're not a medic. You're not a doctor. It's not your job to know how to cure your mum. I think the bigger thing is like, okay, what kind of strategy can be given? She's had pneumonia or chest infections for the last 2 months with no break. You've got tests, but she's too ill to have them, and she's not feeling hopeful. So we know that her mental state is declining. But you just feel like you're not really in it, you're just watching it. That's a defense mechanism. It's a bit of depersonalization, it's a bit of detachment, and you can understand it, can't you? When it's overwhelming for the brain, it's almost like easier to see it like a film's playing, as opposed to imagine that you're the main characters in it. I suppose the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that whilst you want to change things, ask yourself how much power you have. So what priorities can you create and work towards so that your mum actually can have at least some positive experiences with and through you? What can you do with her? That might be something as simple as sitting and helping her eat whilst reading a story to her. It might be putting on a television program that she used to watch and just being present with her. It might be asking her, just genuinely asking her what she thinks would be helpful. Just all these kind of engagements that you can do because you're with her all the time, but that kind of help her feel part of that process, but also create clear boundaries about what you can and can't do. I don't know whether you really do need to now think about a more planned intervention through medics. It sounds like if she's not getting well, there's maybe an underlying issue. So pneumonia, there's obviously some infection there. There's some opportunities. Look at what's happening at the moment with ivermectin. I'm not saying it's COVID, by the way, but I am saying that ivermectin's getting a lot of interest, and I saw some reports on it today. And I think that that's something that's an antiparasitic, but it seems to be having some kind of real impact where people are really poorly with things like pneumonia and COVID. So look at the treatments, get strategic in that way. But it's not your job to transform your mum. It's your job to be with her while she transforms into whatever she transforms into. And that might not always be good, but just letting her know that you're with her on this journey, that's an incredibly comforting thing. The other thing is your mum needs to want to be here. I don't have to be a doctor to understand that fighting and believing the need to fight and wanting to still be here is so powerfully important when dealing with disease. It's a desire to remain. We're spiritual creatures as much as we are physical. So when our spirit is sick and our body is sick, then it's a really, really problematic time because of the fact that you're walking that tightrope, because you have to make choices about what you do want. And sometimes we just want to let go. And sometimes we don't actively acknowledge that with the people that we love, but maybe you also need to have some conversations about what she really wants, because most mums don't want to tell their children that they're tired or that they may be ready to let go. And because we don't talk about dying and we don't talk about the honour of dying, a good death, a death we choose, that we get so caught up in talking around it that we never get to the root. I'm not encouraging you to say, Mum, do you want to die? I'm just saying, like, explore those conversations of what she sees she would really like to change and happen. And if she talks about being well and getting out of bed, then it's all about, okay, well, what can we do together to make that possible? And if it's, I don't want anything, I just want it to stop, I want it to let go, you can have those conversations honestly and openly. And you can also share your feelings, which would probably be, I would really like you to stay and fight because I think we can get through this, but you have to get to that point, if that makes sense. Hi, how can I move from losing a friendship with my best friend for the last 17 years? She ended up in bed with my boyfriend after a party, and she turns out she's pregnant with his baby. I'm no longer with my boyfriend. I feel so empty and lost. I can't believe she would do this to me. I'm heartbroken as we've been through so much together. I mean, it's a really bum deal when your best mate of 17 years ends up having sex with your partner, let alone getting pregnant. I don't know what the state of their relationship is. It could just be that she's pregnant and now dealing as a single mum with this pregnancy, or it could be that actually he is now with her. Either way, you kind of end up at the same point, the same position, which is ultimate betrayal. They could have been really drunk. They may be really regretful. That doesn't mean you have to forgive either of them. I'm saying that sometimes it can feel, when somebody does that to us, that it's a cool, calm, collected and calculated attempt to destroy what we have. And then you make yourself think about all the times they were together and all the times you thought they were just having fun as a group with you, but actually were they really flirting and were they really kind of connecting in that way? These are the questions that will drive you mad, and none of them matter because all you need to know is what actually happened, and that is they betrayed you. It's hard to make a decision on what to take forward. there is the possibility that you can still have her in your life if you feel that you will miss her more than you will be willing to reject her. So if she's apologized, if you feel like you're conflicted, give yourself time to think about that. If, like when my friend was sleeping with my husband, it was a straight no. It was over, both for her and for him. I know my boundaries, and I think that if you know yours, you'll have a good inkling as to what you want to do. But how do you deal with the betrayal? Well, first of all, you accept it was nothing to do with you. I know that it feels like it was to do with you. I know that you were the one who has the origin now of the pain, but actually it wasn't to do with you. It was all to do with them. It was to do with them being selfish, impulsive, lustful. It was to do with them breaking boundaries. It wasn't about you. You remained faithful, didn't betray, were a good friend and a good partner. So when you say, how are you going to deal with this hurt? Well, first of all, know your worth. You're worth more than a man who will sleep with your best friend. And you're worth more than a friend who will betray her best friend. So you are already a person of integrity, which means that the relationships that you are going to wish to have reflected and responded to in your life are those with integrity. You're going to want loyalty. You're going to want people to make you feel like when you're in that relationship, you're raised up, and where you know that that will never happen again because you feel so secure. These are things that time are going to tell. These are things that time are going to help you redefine. I'm not going to say heal. Ironically, you will heal. You'll meet somebody great. You'll have a different life. But you'll never ever regret what happened, because the life that you're destined for will be the life that you want. But right now it's about acknowledging you have a death, a grief. Two people that you love dearly have done something so reprehensible that you've lost not only the people, but the history with those people, because it taints it. And that's one of the things that you really have to try to work against. It's like all those memories that you had of great worth, all those love and laughter and fun and friendship that you had, all of that was real. I know it doesn't feel it now. But one of the things that I had to do with my own marriage when it ended, I had to remember all the good stuff. Yeah, it screwed up in the end. Yeah, it was a take a break story. But the point is, all the rest was great. Every single bit of it. It's too often in relationships, because they end badly, we don't look at all the worth and learning and growth and joy and fun and laughter and friendship and experience that we had. It's too easy to throw it all out. But if you can hold on to all those with worth, it lightens the load and it removes the hostility. It reduces the bitterness, and it leaves space for love to grow for other people as well. Do not take it personally. It's not on you. But do know that what you found out in this situation is you have integrity, you have expectations, you have boundaries, and they're great things to have as a human being. And again, I'm not judging anybody who in these circumstances takes back the best friend, acknowledges and accepts the mistakes. It happens. It's very freeing very often for both parties. It's something I think spiritually very few of us can manage. I couldn't have managed that, but I could manage that with my ex-husband. I don't feel any anger towards him at all. I'm just joyful for the life he has now with his new partner and the children that they've had. It's beautiful. And it's possible to get to that space and place without that hostility and bitterness, to let that go. How do you get a narcissistic ex who made you suicidal out of your head when she contacts your daughter and family? Still, it's like everyone is blind to what she is. So the first is you being suicidal and her being narcissistic. Let's just separate both of those. Her narcissism will definitely have impacted on your mental health devastatingly and drastically, but she is not what makes you suicidal. Your suicidal thoughts come from a depression and a very low state of mind where you're questioning your self-worth and questioning your meaning and questioning your purpose. She doesn't have the power to do any of that. So her narcissism may have brought you to a position and a point where you feel that you've lost your years of life, you haven't managed to attain the relationship standard that you wanted, that you've been betrayed, that you've been made to feel like your self-esteem has been chipped away into a million pieces, like you've been used and abused. They'll all be real. But when we say our narcissistic ex is responsible for our feelings of suicidality, that's when we're giving them power that they can't have. You're choosing those feelings. I'm not saying that you're choosing them in a conscious way. I'm not saying that you want them. Of course you don't. But I'm saying the power lies with you. For whatever reason, you are giving power to somebody who's no longer part of your life, albeit that she has access to other areas of your life. And it feels like you can't separate yourself from what you see as the power that she has over the overarching experience of your family. So how would I handle this? Well, first of all, she's toxic. I'd stay away from her fully. You don't need to have a relationship with her. You don't need to speak to her. You can, for your own sanity and safety, place her in a separate space to your world. You don't see her, you don't have contact with her, you don't talk about her, you don't ask about her. Now, where it is with your family, they are sadly sentient, conscious beings with their own levels of relationships. And just because you see her a certain way doesn't mean that they will. I'm afraid that's something that they will have to need to come to terms with themselves if she treats them in a way that then mirrors that. But remember, narcissists in relationships that are intimate are very different on the whole to narcissists who are in relationships with other people. Even they, with their very low boundaries, will tend to have more boundaries because they're not in direct relationships, intimately wise, with those people around them. I'm not saying they won't do things, I'm just saying it's less likely to get as far because partners who are intimate are more likely to be downtrodden over time by narcissists. She'll have less opportunity to do that with your daughter and family. However, I would say it's really worth having conversations with those people who are in your family who love you. If you were to come to me and say, you having a relationship with my ex adds to me feeling suicidal, I would, as your brother or as your father, I would ask you to contemplate that impact on me. Because the likelihood is they will then be able to negotiate and navigate what that is doing to you and then how their actions are contributing. But like I said, bring it back to the state of power within the self. You are the one with the feelings. You are the one believing that you are suicidal. You are the one with the power to change that. She has no power over you unless you're going to give it her. And it feels to me like she's had that too long already. Also, can I just say this? Sometimes when we've had a narcissistic partner, everybody else thinks that they were fine. It's really hard to come to terms with. Again, I don't think we talk about it often. Psychopaths and narcissists are chameleons. They can put on a different coat of colour where they are a different person. They can put on a different coat of colour where they act in a way to this person completely differently to the way that they act to that person. They can just morph into whatever they need to be personality-wise. It's what they do. It's how they become con artists, etc. So your family may not have the relationship with them as they did with you, right? So you being like, this woman's crazy, she's ruined my life and tried to make me crazy. If they've only had a good relationship with her, that's going to confuse them. And sometimes it's really easy for them to not change their worldview by going, well, you're the one being a bit crazy around this stuff. And then if they've got her manipulating that story and amplifying it, oh yeah, he was really difficult. That's how these things work, which is again why I would try not to get into that whole constant bitter conversation about her and instead withdraw from the relationship entirely. Try to avoid conversations about her unless they are those direct ones I'm talking about. And also, don't take it personally if people don't believe you, because remember how you were taken in by her. That's the key. Don't judge people who are taken in by a narcissist. They are good at their game and they are good at getting people on side. Hi Emma, have you got any tips for being resilient? Some people seem to bounce back from so much. So, resilience is something you can learn. It really is. Some people are born with it. I think that I've got quite resilient genes in the fact that most things can hit me in the face and I'll just go ouch and then just carry on. But even my resilience has been tested in the past few years, past 5 years particular, when you have loss, you're like, ugh. But I would say that resilience and bouncing back. So resilience and bouncing back, I think bouncing back seems, I use the words myself, but it seems a little bit too simplified. You know, you bounce back straight away. Down you're up, you're down you're up. I don't believe that. It's more, resilience says, no matter how flattened I am by the avalanche, and no matter how long it takes me to pick my way out through the ice, I know I will. So instead of this bounce back, instead of this flex and break, and flex but not break, I don't think it's as simple as that. I think the analogy that I just give you about the avalanche and being under it, but knowing that you're going to get out, not necessarily always knowing how, just knowing that somewhere in the seat of your belly and in the back of your mind, you know you will get out. Bouncing back, I think, is simplistic. Resilience isn't about going, this was the biggest mistake ever. Oh, what have I learned from it? Great, let's just get on with that tomorrow. It's about going, that was painful. How did it happen? Why did it happen? What have I learned? What do I need to readdress and reassess? How do I really amplify the potential to take all of the pain and to make it progressive? When you're resilient, you feel exactly the same level of agony in all situations that other people would still feel agony. It's just that when you feel it, you say to yourself, there is something I need to learn. I am growing from this. You take the tapestry of life, and when you miss a stitch, instead of seeing that breaks the picture, you believe it just creates a new one. So you find a purpose and a reason. And how can you learn it? Well, you take some risks. You take some risks, but you know that you're the one doing it. You don't just listen to other people telling you what to do. You make decisions based on your own courage, even when it's full of fear. Resilience is the art of doing. It's not just the art of reacting to, it's the art of doing. It's the agency that's involved. You are the driver of the car. When you crash, it's on you, but at least you know that it was on you. And then when you figure out what crashed and why, you know how to figure that forward. That becomes strategy. Resilience is the art of agency. The world does not happen to you, you happen to the world. Resilience is the art of knowing that you'll fall on your face and you'll crash the car, but it's on your terms, in your time. And because of that, it's because you will then figure out ways to prevent that in the future. And because of that, you'll be more prepared even if things go wrong in the future. The art of resilience is knowing that life is going to hurt you again and again and again. And the wins may be small and the losses may be huge. But the point is that as long as you are learning, as long as you are reframing, rebranding, reinventing, then you're never ever losing. It's a way of taking every single profound moment of pain and making it purposeful. Self-help books will help you. Setting goals will help you. Doing something like I'm doing at the weekend, throwing myself out of a plane at 10,000 feet would help you. Doing things that remind you of your limits being only the ones that you place on yourself. And also closing down the critical box, the critical voice in your brain that just tells you what you're not great at, what tells you that your limits are, when actually that limit, that's just about other people's voices from the past. Close that down as well. But read a book on self-help and resilience, plan some goals, put yourself in a situation where you're scared to shitless. Honestly, just really scare yourself shitless. That's how you build resilience. And learn to say no. That's a really good resilient tool. Somebody asks you for something, you'd usually give in, you should say yes, you go no. Because resilience comes from the power of the self. And you can only have that when you start acknowledging what you need. Right, guys, I will see you on Wednesday. Lovely having you as ever.